A few weeks ago, I made a video showing how you can pull Zillow property data directly from Zillow. Now, a number of you requested, how can you also get agent information as well? So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can pull agent name, agent phone, and agent email from on-market properties directly from Zillow using Make.com, a no-code software that anyone can do, even if you have no technical experience at all. So follow me and let me show you how to do it. In the last video, I showed you how to pull properties from Zillow using Make.com and then storing them in Airtable. And so what we did is we pulled a number of properties from Chicago and we've stored them in this Airtable. If you haven't seen that video yet, you're going to probably want to watch that before watching this video, because what we're doing in this video is we're not pulling property information from Zillow, we're pulling the agent's email, name, and phone. What I have here is we're going to use these three example properties, and I'm using Airtable, which if you've never used Airtable, it's pretty much, you can think of it like Google Sheets or Excel, although it functions differently. It works a lot easier and nicer with Make. So you're going to need three tools. You're going to need Airtable, you're going to need Make, and then you're also going to need a tool called Apify, which is going to allow us to actually scrape Zillow in bulk. Now in the last video, I did not use another tool to scrape Zillow, I just used Make, and you can do that same thing here. However, the only difference is Apify is going to allow us to do large properties in bulk without getting blocked by Zillow for being a bot. Each of these solutions are free or have a free tier, so you could do this automation completely free, but then if you want to pull a lot more properties, you'll have to pay either for a Make account or an Apify account or both. Airtable you can pretty much get away with on the free tier for a while until you would need to upgrade. So here we are in Airtable and I have my three properties that we're going to pull. We don't have their agent information yet, but we do have the information that we previously pulled in the last video, which I will link in the description below. I will also include links to Airtable, Apify, and Make. I will also be including the Make scenario that we build, so you can download that for free and you can start running this automation right away. The first thing you're going to want to do is build out this Airtable, and if you haven't watched the other automation video yet, you can just add in the addresses that you want to pull. All we're going to need is the addresses. Let's head over to Make to begin building the automation. Okay, so here we are in Make. If you have not used Make before, it is the software we're going to use to build the automation. And what it does is it's connecting different softwares to each other via these things called modules, and we're passing pieces of data along so that we can then speak to the different softwares and build the total automation. What we have here is we have Airtable automation combined with a few different tool modules and then also Apify. Inside these tool modules, like we have here, and then also the text parser, we're going to be running functions to pull the data that we receive from Apify. So the way it works is it's relatively simple. It searches Airtable, and if you have not used Make before, to be able to get a module, just click Add Module, and then you can search for the software that you're trying to use. And it has a bunch of different modules here to choose from. We're going to be using Airtable, and we're going to be using the Search Records module. And so you'll need to connect your Airtable to Make. You can do that by clicking Add, and then it'll prompt you to connect to Make to Airtable. You should have already created an Airtable account. Then you're going to want to find your base. In this case, the base is Zillow Scraper Tutorial, and then the table that the addresses are located in. And then I also have these other elements filled out, which you don't need to, but I have this just for the sake of the video. I'm pulling from the properties view, which is a view of this table. It's a filtered view. So we're only pulling 3 properties instead of all of them. And then I have the limit set at 3. You can set those to whatever you want. The next module is going to be this text aggregator module. And let me show you, actually, let me step back real quick and let me show you what it looks like when we run this Airtable module. This is what we get back. We get 3 different bundles, and these are the different bundles of data. So this is each row inside Airtable that we pulled, and it's each address that we pulled. As you'll see, we have the address here. And then the next thing that we do is we map that to a text aggregator, and what this is doing is this is taking all of these bundles and it's aggregating it into one bundle. And what we've done is we've mapped the data here you can click into the text box and you can choose the data that we're mapping. We're using address and we're putting quotations around the address, and we're using the advanced settings option, and we're clicking row separator, other separator, comma. And the reason for this is because we are going to be using this data in a API call to Apify, and the way the data needs to be set up is each address needs to have quotations around it, and it needs to be separated by a comma. So the next thing it does is it sends this data into Apify. And what we have here is we're sending an API request in a JSON format, which if you are new to APIs and JSON, don't really worry too much about it. This is just the data, the format that we have to send the data in. What we're doing here is we're sending these addresses to the scraper so that it can then start to pull the data that we're looking for. And so this is the form that we need to have it set in. If we go over to Apify, let me show you how that works. So once you log into Apify, you can get a free plan. You don't have to pay right away, but what we're gonna wanna do is go to Store, search for Zillow Scraper, and we're going to want to use the Zillow Detail Scraper by Max Copel. What you'll wanna do first is you'll actually wanna run it inside here. And so how we can do that is you have two options. You can add in property Zillow URLs, or you can add in their addresses. So I have their addresses here. This is what it looks like if we're just running it in Apify. If we do a JSON format, which we're gonna need for make, this is the data, this is what we'll be sending. So we'll be copying this and sending it via make. But what we'll do is you can add in an address and just click save and start, and it'll run once. And then that way we can access it inside make. So add in your addresses, you can add in as many as you want, and then you can click save and start. It will run actually. You can see the runs here in this tab, and you can see the output. So the output is, this is all the data that we get about these properties. So you'll see we have the addresses here, and then we have just a ton of different data about these different properties. What we will be doing is actually pulling this data into make and then using it inside make instead of using it inside the Apify interface. So that's why we are going to be using the JSON format. So let's go back over to make. So we'll use the run actor module. You'll create your connection by clicking add. Then we're going to want to choose the actor Max Copel, which this will populate after you run it inside Apify once. So just go ahead and run it inside Apify. I think there's another way to do it. You don't have to run it, but this way works. Run it inside Apify once, like I just showed you, and then it will populate here in the module. Next is to input the JSON, which I told you in Apify, it showed you what that JSON format was. We just copy that, but instead of using the addresses we had in Apify, we're replacing it with the text that we aggregated of all the addresses we pulled from Airtable. So this is what that JSON data request looks like, except instead of using these addresses, we're going to be using the ones that we pull from Airtable. You'll also notice that they have quotations around them and a parenthesis and a comma in between each address. That is why we aggregated it like we did. So once we run that, we're going to want to sleep. We're going to want to use a sleep module, which you can find by going to the tools, and you can go to sleep. What that does is it will delay any execution in the next module. So what I have this set to right now is 5. It should be 25 or a little bit longer. The reason for that is because in this module, we are sending the data to be scraped. And then in this Apify module, we are pulling that data back to us. So we have to, there's a time that it takes to actually scrape. So we have to delay requesting that data back until it's finished running. So that's why we have this sleep module here. And then we use the next module, which is the get dataset items Apify module. And we're going to put in the default dataset ID. So I just have this here. But what you'll want to do is you'll want to map it to default dataset ID. It will then pull the data from here and it will push it into this so we can pull the address and the Zillow listings from there. So this is the result of that. We get a bundle. We should get 3 bundles out. Each bundle has all the property information in it. So if I go in the first bundle, I have a bunch of different information, and you can filter through all the information and see what is relevant to you, what you want to pull. But what we're focused on right now is the listed by array, which has the data of what agent, their name, and in this case, we have their name and then their email and phone number. This is what we're pulling. So in some instances, it will have this issue here. You'll see it says email, but in reality, it's their email connected with their phone number. So I'm going to show you in a function a little down the automation to be able to separate these two from each other. But what we're doing is we're going to take this data and we're going to store it back in Airtable. You'll also notice that you have another collection, which tends to be the broker information. But for now, we're going to focus on pulling this data, the listing agent information. We next have another module, which is set multiple variables. What I'm doing here is I'm pulling that data, the listed by, so the listing agent's email and their phone, from this listed by data. So what I have here is I have a map function, a get function, another map function, another get function. And what we're doing is we're using the listed by array to map the listing agent. So we don't want to pull the broker, we want to pull the listing agent. So it maps the elements with an ID that equals listing agent. We get the first item in that array using the get function, and then we map again to the text inside that array that has an ID equal to email, and we get the first item in that array. So I know that's incredibly confusing, and it might be if you've never used functions before, that's okay. And it just takes time and practice to get good with them. But the result that we get back is we're actually going to get, what we get back is we get their agent email with their phone number. So we had to use those functions to be able to pull this data and store it as agent email. Text parser, the purpose of this is what we're going to be doing is searching that email for phone numbers. So you can use this tool by going to text parser and click match elements. And what we're doing is we're searching a string element matching predefined patterns. And this pattern we're going to be searching for is phone number. So we're searching that agent email for a phone number. And you'll notice, like I said, this agent email has a phone number in it. So we're searching for that, and what we get back is we get a match of the phone number. And then if it doesn't have a phone number, it returns an error. But to be able to get around the error, we use a error handler, which in this case I'm going to use resume, and I'm going to have it empty. You can get an error handler by right-clicking and click Add Error Handler, and you choose resume. So what that does is that pulls the phone number. So now what we have is the match here in the first bundle. We have been able to pull the phone number, so we have the phone number. Now we use Airtable to search all the records that match the address. So this is the formula. We have curly brackets address equals, and this is the name of the field where your address is stored. So if your address is addresses or something else, you're going to change that. So address, this is the field we're searching. In curly brackets equals quotation marks, then we put the address, and we're taking the address from Apify. And the reason we're taking the data from Apify and not from Airtable, because you'll see you can't pull data from Airtable. And the reason for that is because the text aggregator, because it aggregated that text, we aren't able to access that data after a text aggregator. So we'll have to pull it from Apify. So we use the street address, and you'll notice it doesn't have the full address written out. So that's why I have street address, address city, comma, state, zip code. And what we're doing is we're searching Airtable to pull that property that we have in Airtable. And the reason we want to search Airtable is we want to get the ID of the record, because then what we're going to do is we're going to update that record. And when we update that record, we're using this update record module to take that ID that we took from here. So record ID, this is what we inputted right here. So the record we got back, and we input it in here, and we update the property. I also included another sleep module for 1 second, and the reason for that is because if you make too many requests to Airtable, it will give you a 429 error, which is really annoying. It is what is called a rate limit error, and that's when you make too many requests to an API, and Airtable has one set in place, so we need to set a delay in between the times that we make that request. So then the next one, like I said, is update a record. We input the ID from the 11 module Airtable. We click ID right here, and we input that right there, and it tells us what record we're updating. And then we have the agent name. This is the same formula, same function that we use to map for the phone and email, the only difference is we're searching for their name now right here instead of their email and phone. And then we have their agent email. This function, how this works, is what we're doing is we're splitting the agent email. So remember how that one email right here, it has their email and their phone. We're splitting it using the phone number as the splitting, as the splitter. So it's the separator. And so what it does is it's searching this data item for this match that we found, and it's splitting them up into two separate pieces. We're using the get function because we want to get the first item in the array, which is their email. Then for phone, what we're doing is because sometimes the phone, like we saw in here, the phone's empty, but the email has the phone in it. So what we're doing in this function is we are checking if that match, which is the phone number that we just pulled, is empty, then we are going to replace it with the phone number. However, if this is not empty, it's going to input the phone number. So you can read about these functions. It returns value 1 if this value is not empty, otherwise it returns value 2. So if value 1, which in this case is the match, is empty, it'll return value 2, which is agent phone. If this is not empty, it will return the match. If there is neither a phone number in the match or the agent phone variable that we set, it will just be empty. I know it's very tricky with the functions. I want to run over those functions just a little bit more here, but let's go back to Airtable to see what the result was. So back in Airtable, we now have the agent name and their email if they have it, and then their phone number. So we have successfully scraped these different properties and we've returned their name, email, and phone and placed it back in Airtable. I only used 3. You can do as many as you want. You could do 1,000 if you want. Just keep in mind that for every 1,000 properties scraped in Apify, I think it's $3 for this scraper. And you'll also notice that we have separated successfully the email from the phone for this property right here, even though the data we got back from Zillow using Apify had the phone and email connected. So let's quickly run over functions. Right here, I have the same data from Apify that we get back after we scrape a property. However, this is in a unparsed format, but what we're using is the JSON parse module, and this is just so I can show you what this looks like. In this, I have a bunch of different variables. I'm using the set multiple variable module, and this is the full function. This is when we're searching for their phone number. So this is the full function. We have a map, a get, a map, and a get. But then I've broken it down into each one. So the first one is where we're just using the map function. So this is where we're pulling all the elements with an ID that equal listing agent. And then the next one is we're using a get function, which gets the first item returned from this function. And then we use a map, which we're now mapping the item that was returned from this function for the text ID that equals phone. And then we're using another get function to return the first item in the value that's returned here, which will be their phone number. And I know it's very complex. I know it's confusing if you've never worked with it before. And like I said, that's okay. I will have a free download link for this make.com scenario. So all you need to do is download the make scenario and then re-upload it into make. You can do that by clicking import blueprint, and then it'll load all this for you. But let's just run this real quick and let me show you what that function does. So in the first function, first map function, we have 2 collections, or we've returned 1 array. So what this has done is it's returned the array that has a listing agent. So if you remember the initial, we have listed by listing agent, then we also have broker. We are just pulling the listing agent collection right here. That's what that first function is for. So it just pulls, so you'll notice now we only have 1 array. We don't have the broker information. The next one is a get function, and that pulls the first item in that array. And so now we have this item, which initially was an array. Now we have both those collections. We've pulled that first item. And the reason for this is if there were 2 agents, what we'd have is we'd have 2 arrays. So we'd have 1 array and then we'd have a second one, and we just want the first one. So that's why we use the get function to pull the first agent. And then the next function is that map function. And what it does is it's searching for an element that has an ID equal to phone. And so here we've pulled that phone number right here. So the this ID equals phone, and the text is right there. But you'll notice this one right here shows that it's an array. And we don't want to store an array in Airtable. We want to just store an item. So that's why we use that next get function to be able to pull just the phone number. So this is the full function right here. I know it's kind of confusing, but we map, then we get that item, then we map again, then we get that item. The next function is to be able to pull that phone number from that email. So right here, I've set this variable as phone email. And what we've done is we're parsing for phone email. So we are searching for a phone number pattern, and that's going to return to us this value right here. Let me just run this. So it returns to us the phone number because we were searching for a phone number. And then the last tool that we're going to do is we're going to split the phone email variable, which the phone email variable is right here. We're going to split this variable by the match, which is the phone number. And then we're going to use a get function to get the first item returned. And the reason we're using a get function is because we want to return the email as an item, not an array. And there is the result. So now we have the match is the phone number, and the email is dave@dave.com. I also apologize, Dave, if you're watching this and I just outed your email to everybody. That is how you can scrape Zillow addresses for the agent information. Now, this only really works if the property is on market. And the reason for that is because Zillow doesn't have listing agent data stored in their system for off-market properties. Some of them will, not all of them, most of them won't. Also, not every agent has their email listed on Zillow as well. So it's just going to pull whatever's listed. And almost all of them have their phone number, but not all of them have their email. Some of them will. So that's it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And you know the old saying, like, subscribe, and become a fan. If you want to, you can download the make scenario from the link below. So that way you don't have to rewrite all the functions yourself. You can download that and then upload it into your make account. It'll all be there ready to go. If you'd like to see anything else automated or any other builds, just let me know in the comments below. You can also email me. My email is in my bio and on my website. All right, that is it. Until next time,